Interfaith Leadership. So happy to have you all on the call today. Please keep the introductions coming in the chat box. My name is Julia Smith, and I am the Marketing and Communications Manager here at IFYC, and I'll turn things over to my colleague Esther to get us started.
Thanks, Julia. Thank you all for coming today to join us on this webinar. I'm really excited to be able to share with you more information about a project that we've been working on with our partners at Dominican University for quite some time now. We have created a complete suite of resources that make up a curriculum that we're calling the Introduction to Interfaith Leadership. And this entire project is funded with generous funding from the Henry Luce Foundation. So starting in July, these resources we're going to cover today will be available to be previewed and for you to kind of go through them and see what you might want to use in your own courses. And we are hoping that many of you will choose to use them in the upcoming academic year of 2016-2017. And we'll talk a little bit more about access to the resources and how all that's going to work as we go through. Great. So if you have any questions throughout the webinar, we are going to take some time at the end to cover those. You can feel free to write them in the chat box as they come up for you, and Julia will be tracking them and touching base. So hopefully by the end we won't have lost any questions. If we do, of course, we're sorry. People to put them in again so we can catch them the second time around. We were hoping to be joined today by our colleague Jeff Carlson at Dominican University. Unfortunately, Jeff had some things come up at the last minute and he's unable to be here with us. But this project really has been a true collaboration between IFYC and Dominican. And so while IFYC has taken the lead on much of the content for this course, Dominican has really taken the lead on keeping us on track in terms of pedagogy and thinking about classroom tools and resources. So despite the fact that Jeff is not here today, because we have been collaborating so closely, I'm also able to answer any questions that you might have about those resources and the content as well. So like I mentioned, this course is going to be freely available. What we've created is a free 8-lesson curriculum that covers the fundamental knowledge and the skills of interfaith leadership. And this course does emphasize the civic relevance of interfaith leadership for today's professional world. These resources are available to faculty and staff who we know might want to use them in different ways, and that's perfectly fine. The resources were developed specifically thinking about an undergraduate audience, so that's the context in which I'm going to be discussing them today. If you have questions about other ways to use them or how you might implement them outside of a classroom, please share them in the chat box and we'll do our best to answer them at the end. So they are designed primarily for undergraduate classrooms, but they're designed to be used in the humanities and the liberal arts as well as in pre-professional classrooms in different areas such as medicine or business or technology, education. So we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the resources themselves. And these materials are presented as a complete course with cumulative learning outcomes. But they are also intentionally modular and adaptable for use in a variety of courses across disciplines. And again, we can get more into this later, but we have designed this curriculum so that you can pick and choose which pieces you might want to use in your course. And although we would love for you to use all of it in a complete set, we're happy to have you use parts of it that are relevant to the courses you're teaching to. So today what we're going to cover is a little bit of the course content. Then we'll talk a little bit about the student learning objectives that we've come up with for this course. I'll touch on the supplemental readings and resources that are coming in addition to the primary videos that make up most of the content. We'll talk a little bit about how you can use this curriculum in your various courses, and I'll talk a little bit about the pilot version of this course that we did last year. And then, of course, we'll save ample time at the end for questions. So now we'd like to take a quick poll. We're curious to know in what types of courses you're most interested in using these resources. So if you can just take a quick moment to answer the poll question before we dive into the course content. We'll keep moving.
Great, so I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. So of the folks who voted, the vast majority look like they're interested in using this for an undergraduate course.
Great. So let's talk a little bit about the content for this course. The course is divided into 8 lessons, and each lesson is further divided into 3 to 5 short modules. For every module, we did a short video and a combination of recommended readings, assignments or exercises, and discussion questions. We've also included recommendations for further reading, some additional assessment tools, and some additional assignments that can be tailored to specific types of courses. So some of the assignments that you might see as suggested further assignments might work better in like a business ethics class and a world religions class, or some things might work more in a course in the religion department than in the education department. But we know that you're going to be tailoring this to your course, so we're trying to be as helpful as we can for all the different disciplines that are going to be accessing these. The first few lessons are designed to help students first begin to develop a vision of interfaith leadership and to understand the context in which this leadership is necessary for today's world. So we discuss the idea of a religiously diverse democracy. We cover a bit of the relevant social theory, specifically the idea of social capital, and we attempt to draw out some of the experiences that students might have had that they could draw from to start seeing themselves as emerging interfaith leaders. At 5 different times throughout the course, 5 different modules, we've included videos that are made up of interviews with a really, truly incredible group of young professionals and IFYC alumni, all of whom currently work in different sectors and apply their own religious literacy and interfaith leadership to their lives, both personal and professional, in different ways. So these videos are included to help students start to see how interfaith leadership might look outside of the classroom or even in their own campus. And will help students to think about how they might apply what they're learning in this course to their professional life after graduation. So the first one of these interview modules appears in lesson 3 on the identity of an interfaith leader. But all 3 of these first lessons are focused more on vision and social context. With lesson 4, we begin to take a deeper dive into the knowledge base of interfaith leadership, and we've divided this, what we're considering necessary knowledge, into 3 larger categories: appreciative knowledge, historical examples of interfaith leadership, or interfaith cooperation, and ethics and theologies of interfaith cooperation. There's 1 lesson devoted to each of these areas of knowledge, and we've also included some skills-based modules that will help students put their developing knowledge into practice in their own lives and in their own context. For example, you may have noticed the storytelling module that was in the previous slide in lesson 3, and we've included a lesson which is a lesson that talks about storytelling and developing a public narrative. And then here in lesson 6, we have a module on building relationships across difference, which focuses primarily on dialogue, what it means to ask good questions, how to form those good questions, and how to identify shared values while also celebrating the distinctions in our religious identities and our experiences. The final 2 lessons go into the greatest depth on implementation and close the loop on helping students to not only identify themselves as interfaith leaders, but to see themselves in the context of the greater interfaith movement today. So lesson 7 is really focused on what else is happening in the world, how can you plug yourself into an ongoing movement. We end the course with lesson 8, which invites students to put together their knowledge and skills that they've learned throughout the course and direct them towards how they can make the vision of interfaith cooperation a reality. Because assessment is an important part of any course, we also, in this final lesson, offer up 5 measurable, tangible outcomes of pluralism and how pluralism affects society. So these are ways that students can not only measure the impact of interfaith cooperation in their communities and in their context, but will also help them to think realistically and concretely about how they can set goals for their own leadership, either in general or in any specific professional area that they're looking to go into. The curriculum was designed with an emphasis on interfaith learning outcomes, and we've organized these learning outcomes by modules, so anyone who's picking and choosing modules rather than using complete lessons or the entire course can see more easily which modules are focused in what areas of learning. You can find the complete list of learning outcomes on our website, although those are arranged by lesson, not by module. But when the full suite of resources is available in July, you'll be able to see the learning outcomes by module, as well as the readings and assignments and things by module as well. Here we just have a list of some of the learning outcomes from the course. This is obviously a very short list of examples, but some of the things that students will be able to do after completing this course is explain the significance of the United States being a religiously diverse democracy, contrast the idea of appreciative knowledge and the idea of religious literacy, begin to articulate their own ethic or theology of interfaith cooperation, identify different professional areas that are currently benefiting from interfaith leadership, and hopefully brainstorm how their own professional lives might be influenced by their training in interfaith leadership. So like I said, the full list of learning outcomes is available on our website, and if you have any questions about specific learning outcomes, I'm happy to answer those at the end of this webinar. Most of the course content is going to be delivered through a series of short videos, which include those interviews with young professionals. But in addition to the videos, each module also has some suggested readings, some discussion questions and facilitation guides for discussion leaders, some tools for assessment, and example assignments or exercises. And in addition to what we're calling the first round of recommended readings and assignments, we also will be including those kind of for further reading or supplemental resources as well that might be a little more tailored to different academic areas. So as you can imagine, the potential reading list for a course in this area is enormous and ever-changing. So we've come up with a list of suggested readings for each module and for each lesson. And some of these suggested readings for this course include work by Diana Eck, specifically her book, A New Religious America, work by Martin Luther King Jr., selections from Interfaith Encounters in America by Kate McCarthy, writing about different kinds of storytelling by Marshall Gans and Zara Snap, work by our colleague and partner Janine Hill Fletcher on constructing religious identity in a cosmopolitan world, as well as several contemporary op-ed pieces and articles that reflect the interreligious nature of current events. You will see when you go in July to look at the complete list of resources and assignments, we really do have a focus on the civic relevance and the contemporary relevance of this for our world today. So there's a lot of great material being written about this in different areas, and we also are encouraging students to look at the news and to look at other sources and find the religious relevance of current events in different ways. Suggested assignments for this course include a lot of interactive exercises that will help students think about their own identity and experience, as well as to learn from the experiences of others. So one example that we have for you here is a Pinterest board assignment, which we are going to be asking students to complete first in Lesson 1, where we'll ask them to create a Pinterest board that reflects their own motivations for taking the course in interfaith leadership. And this may include elements of their religious identity, their own previous experiences, their commitments, and really anything that might have drawn them to this course in the first place. Then we will have them revisit their Pinterest boards in Lesson 4 when we start talking about religious diversity and appreciative knowledge. And at that time, we'd ask them to select the Pinterest board of a fellow student, ideally of a different religious or ethical identity, and to identify 1 to 2 areas of shared values or common experiences that have brought them both to their interest in interfaith leadership, and to have them think about how the similarities and differences on their boards influence the development of their own appreciative knowledge of the religious or ethical tradition of others. Other assignments that we have throughout the course include some photo elicitation exercises, having students complete identity maps, planning actual events for their specific campus or communities, and a lot of work in small groups to help students practice their skills as facilitators as well as leaders. Here we have some samples of discussion prompts that are included in the course materials, and all of these point back to the learning outcomes for the course. These discussion questions are designed to help students reflect on their own leadership, the context of their own community, and their concerns or real-world questions about how this might, how interfaith leadership specifically or the knowledge they're learning might play out in their lives, both on campus and after campus. I just also want to mention here that one tool that's available just by the nature of the learning environment that the course materials live on is that there's a cross-campus discussion board. So What that means is that students will be able to engage with students from other campuses who are utilizing the same resources on a different campus. So in the pilot version of this course, this feature was really useful and attractive specifically for faculty whose students were not exposed to a lot of religious, cultural, or racial diversity on their campus. And so while it's possible for faculty to choose to have their students only respond to discussion prompts on a course-specific discussion board that would just be their students and just for them, the cross-campus conversation is something we hope that many of you will find exciting because we do think it will ultimately be enriching for student experience. So let's talk a little bit about how to use these resources. The lessons, as I mentioned, are divided into 3 to 5 modules in order to be adaptable to you, so you can use the parts that work for the course and add to the course that you're teaching, and perhaps save some others for another day or for future assignments for students. You are welcome to use the modules in any order or combination that suit your needs. And the modules are designed specifically for blended or online learning, so they will be living in that online learning environment that students can access either in the classroom or in their dorms or wherever. The content is designed so that it can be implemented in multiple disciplines. And the online materials will all be housed by Dominican University, and you'll have access to their technical support for any issues that you might have in the learning environment. And as I mentioned, the online discussion allows you to have your students engage with students from other campuses around the country. For the purposes of our grant reporting, for the purposes of our grant reporting, all the materials must be accessed through Dominican University's Secure and Stable Online Learning Environment, which is hosted by Canvas. Sorry about that, we just had a little glitch. So faculty who are interested in previewing the materials can do so, and we'll give you a temporary login that we'll provide in July when the materials are available. When using the materials for the course, all the students will be granted access to the Dominican University Online Learning Environment as well, and that's where they can watch the videos, download readings, complete assignment exercises, and participate in the shared online discussion forum. At this time, because of our grant reporting and tracking, we're not able to send individual files or videos to faculty who want to use them and host them on their own campus site. So I imagine there probably are questions around this, and I'm happy to take those at the end. We learned a lot about this particular area of the process from the pilot version, and so hopefully this year will run pretty smoothly. But we know that a lot of campuses have specific restrictions on what their students can access and how, so we're happy to work with you to make sure that your students can access the materials they need in order to use this course. So now let's talk a little bit about the pilot version. We did do a 6-lesson pilot of this course on 5 campuses in the spring of 2015. And so here we just wanted to share some of the findings from that pilot version. All of the feedback that we got from students and from faculty played a key role in helping us shape this new, more robust version of the course. And for that reason, we also would hope to gather feedback from this course as well to help us guide future academic work and the development of future courses that we may be undertaking in the next several years. So overall, the feedback was really positive. Students thought that the course materials of the pilot really added to the courses that they were taking. Faculty thought it was useful. The video content was somewhat shared, the video content of the pilot is pretty much all included in this new version. There's just a lot more in this new version. What things that we learned from it was a desire for faculty to be able to adapt it to their course a little more easily, which is why this time around we're doing 3 to 5 short modules per lesson rather than 1 longer episode per lesson. And we are really working hard to make sure that the videos and the supplementary materials complement and integrate with one another well. We heard that they wanted more contemporary examples of interfaith leadership, which has become a major feature of this new course. And again, as I mentioned before, the discussion boards that worked across campuses were really enriching the first time around, so we're excited to see how people use them this time. Oh, yes, and I also want to be able to share with you today We have started to get rough cuts back of the video modules, which means that this is not a finalized version, but I do want to share with you one of the short video modules from Lesson 2. So this is introducing the idea of kind of the social landscape in which interfaith leadership in the United States would be. So we're going to be watching, so Lesson 2 is all about the key concepts of interfaith leadership, and we're going to be watching a video that specifically talks about interfaith leadership in multi-religious democracy like the United States. So I just want to throw out the caveat that because this is not a final version, this has not been sound edited, you'll notice that there's no music, there's not, all the volume is not equal, but we're really excited to share with you the direction that these videos are going in. There are some changes that we'll obviously be making to this before the final round, but this will give you a taste for the direction and the style of the videos themselves.
What is an interfaith leader? It's someone with the vision, knowledge, and skills to help people work together toward shared values and the common good, especially when they orient around religion in different ways. Interfaith leadership begins with a vision, and that vision must reflect both our current social reality and our civil dynamics. In other words, the world around us. So let's start there. For this course, we're going to focus specifically on interfaith leadership in the United States. As a religiously diverse democracy, the U.S. presents both opportunity and challenge when it comes to interfaith leadership.
In this lesson, we'll look at the realities of religious diversity in the United States, and we'll examine some of the ways people respond to religious diversity in their communities. We'll discuss pluralism, and we'll explore why pluralism is a central idea in interfaith leadership. Finally, we'll offer a couple of strategies for thinking about how interfaith leadership can influence and benefit the social landscape, specifically through something called social capital. Religion and politics are interwoven in American life and identity, try as we might to keep them separate. Since the country's founding, religion and religious diversity have played an important role in our society. The United States is historically Christian, yet we celebrate religious diversity, and we are committed to religious freedom and the non-establishment of an official religion as core national values.
We said the United States is a religiously diverse democracy. So what does this mean? First, it's about freedoms. We have the freedom to express our different religious and ethical identities in a variety of ways. We can establish organizations to gather people of like beliefs together to amplify our voices. We can vote for local, state, and national representatives based on our beliefs and values. We can even run for office ourselves for the express purpose of putting those beliefs and values into practice on a larger scale through legislation. And when we feel a law infringes on our ability to practice our religion freely, we can file a case in court. Basically, democracy allows us to make our personal convictions public. Those religious and ethical views matter. They guide our lives. They are a core part of many people's identities. Religious and ethical beliefs impact how people think about fundamental issues, from what a family should look like, to the kind of investments we should make in education, to the shape of our foreign policy. These perspectives can have high stakes and high impact on how we live our lives. On a national scale, having diversity in our religious orientations means that frequently we'll disagree on fundamental questions. We may even disagree on what kind of questions are fundamental. Our laws and protections help to shape the way our differing religious identities interact and impact one another in public life. Despite our different beliefs, views, and religious traditions, we can strive to speak to one another in language that we can all comprehend. We can build on shared values and shared goals for the broader community, but it takes effort and determination. We tend to hear about diversity as though it is inherently a good thing. But the truth is that diversity is neither good nor bad. It's simply the fact of living in the modern globalized world with people who have a variety of identities. What can be good or bad, positive or negative, constructive or destructive, is not the diversity itself, but how we respond to and engage it. In a religiously diverse democracy like the United States, we need to transform our diversity into what we call pluralism. What exactly do we mean by pluralism? We'll discuss it further in the next module, but Diana Eck, the founder of the Pluralism Project at Harvard University, defines pluralism as the energetic engagement of diversity through the active seeking of understanding across lines of difference. And to do that, we need interfaith leaders. Leaders who know how to illuminate shared values. Leaders who can help to grow trusting, respectful relationships between different religious communities. Leaders who can help broker agreements between people who may disagree on fundamental issues. We need leaders who can work collaboratively and cooperatively with people of different religious orientations toward common goals for the common good.
Great. So that gives you a taste for the direction that we're going with these videos. And in terms of length, that would be about the average length of the more content-heavy videos. We also have a number of the videos that are introducing ideas or introducing lessons and summarizing ideas and lessons that are much shorter. And then we also have a couple, typically the interview modules that are a little bit longer because we're hearing from multiple people and their own stories. I also just want to mention, I know this is coming up in the questions and we're about to move into questions. So I just want to say, I'm sorry I didn't say this at the outset and didn't repeat it several times, but all of these materials are available completely for free. There's no cost associated with using them. So we hope that you'll make liberal use of them in many different ways. And I know that a number of you have already been putting questions into the chat box, but now we're moving into the question portion. So any questions that you have, please type them in. Julia is doing a great job of capturing them, and I will do my best to answer all of them as best I can.
So the big first question was whether there was a charge associated with this course. So I'm happy to have an easy answer that it's all totally free. The next little group of questions that I've seen is around appropriate use, or whether we're encouraging use outside of college classrooms. And so is it appropriate to use this in other community settings? There was also a question about community colleges specifically. So would it work in a two-year institution?
Yeah, so the general answer is that this is available to be used really anywhere that you think it would be useful. Community colleges specifically, we would love to have community colleges, whether they're two-year or four-year institutions, using this in a course. As I said at the outset, we've designed this primarily with an undergraduate student in mind, but we have tried to include enough non-traditional liberal arts campus examples that it would be relevant for distance learning as well as more traditional classroom learning. And in terms of community centers and things like that, I think the answer is much the same. If after going through the materials you think that this would be relevant materials for different folks in your community, we would strongly encourage you to use it. It's free for you to use in any space. And we've had a number of people who've asked about using it in graduate courses as well, or in seminary settings, and that's also wonderful, and we are excited that people want to use it in different areas. There are certain modules or certain areas that you might find you want to tailor a bit more if you're using them in a graduate setting or in a community setting rather than in an undergraduate campus. But that's why we've made them adaptable, so that you can use them in the best way that's going to serve the folks that you're teaching and learning with.
So if you have follow-up questions, please don't hesitate to type them in. I've also lumped together a bunch of questions about the actual experience of using the materials. So Karen was wondering about the discussion boards, if you could say a little bit more about those.
Yeah, so the discussion boards that are on the course site where all of this will be living are shared between any campus that's accessing them. So let's say that your students, you assign your students to answer the discussion prompts that are included on the course site. They will be in a discussion board with students who are on other campuses. There are some ways in which this works really well, which is, as I mentioned, if your students are not exposed to a lot of religious diversity, this might give them a chance to hear personal stories and accounts from students who are of different religious backgrounds or coming from different contexts. Because we do not have any control over when people are using these, it is possible that if you're the first class to come into these discussion boards, you would not have that added benefit, which I mean, you could always have students go back and look at the responses of others later. You also will be able to pull the answers just of your students. So if you just want to make sure that all of your students responded to a prompt for grading purposes, or just to see what the conversation is like in between your own students, you can do that. You can sort the discussion that way. There's not the ability to limit the discussion to just your students on the shared curriculum site. So if you were going to have a conversation or you were going to use different discussion prompts for your course, we would recommend that you do that on whatever platform your campus typically uses for online discussion. But the discussion boards that are on the shared course site will be available to students who are using it across the country, or really around the world if people are using it in other countries.
Okay. And so students will register and set up an account to use the materials that gets them into the online discussion?
That's a great question. Yeah, so if you want to use this for a course, what we'll need you to do is send us a roster of student email addresses, essentially, and then we will create logins for those students, and they'll be sent to them directly. So students will be able to access the materials by logging into the course site. I know that most campuses have their own online learning environments that they use. A lot of people use Blackboard, some people use Canvas, which is what this one's on. The only reason that this has to be on a closed environment for the first 2 years is, like I mentioned before, so we can track it and report on it for the grant that funded the project. But students, any student that you have will be able to access it. We just need to get their email from you. And it is going to be living on Dominican's closed site, so it has all the security features of a campus closed environment. We're not putting it in an open learning environment at this stage, although we do hope to offer it as a standalone online course in the future.
Great. Joan, not Joe, asked a couple of different questions. One about whether you can talk a little more about projects that students might take on as part of the course and their participation. And secondly, Joan also asked about, where did this go? Let's start with that.
Okay.
How many hours of homework per lesson would we recommend students set aside?
Oh, great. Okay. So a lot of those questions will depend on whether you're using all of the materials and all the recommended assignments, or if you are picking and choosing a little bit more. But generally speaking, we are, and our partners at Dominican, specifically the folks who are in their teaching and learning excellence department, are really focusing on, at this stage in the development, are really focusing on workload and kind of finalizing all the readings. So our hope is that despite the fact that we are coming up with readings and assignments by module, each lesson will function more or less as 1 week's worth of material. So there'll be 4 short videos, there'll be a handful of required readings, and then a couple of for further readings or supplemental readings, and then probably 1 big interactive or reflective project and a couple of discussion questions, and then throughout the course there'll be a couple of more cumulative ones like short papers or projects that you'd come back to. In terms of hours of homework, I mean, the videos themselves, one lesson is probably between 20 and is definitely between 20 and most 40 minutes for any given lesson, probably less than that, probably between 20 and 30, maybe 35 for a couple of them. We really have tried to keep the videos under 8 minutes for the most part, and most of them are under 5, like I said, with the exception of some of the interview lessons, or interview modules. The projects that we are recommending, because this is a course on interfaith leadership, and interfaith leadership requires interaction and developing your skills in interpersonal relationships, we really are trying to emphasize a lot of collaborative work with fellow students and thinking about the needs of your particular context. So thinking about this specifically for undergraduate students who would be in a more traditional classroom or in a blended learning classroom, we have a couple of assignments that are asking them to assess what might be possible on their campus, or coming up with a plan for an event, whether that's an interfaith service project on their campus or something else that might serve the specific needs of their community, we're asking them to come up with some examples of good interfaith questions to start or to sustain a dialogue. We ask them to do a lot of self-reflective work because we think that learning more about your own religious identity is an important part of this, and being able to articulate your identity through storytelling and through public narrative. So there's a lot of interactive projects and a lot of self-reflective projects. But again, a lot of these assignments are things that you would tailor to your course and to your students. So we're hoping to. We are really confident in the assignments that we're putting out there, and we think this is going to be a robust and exciting class, and we're also looking forward to learning from you and how you use this for any future academic projects that we put out there in the future.
Great. So Nathan is asking if you can say a little more about what kinds of assessment materials we're putting together. And related to your last point, Derek is asking, taking into account all of the projects, homeworks, and readings, will there be an official syllabus for the course?
Great. So we do not have, we will be creating a syllabus in the sense that we will be creating a document that pulls together all of the readings and assignments and videos and things like that. However, because we're keeping this intentionally adaptable, it's not official in the sense that, not everyone who's using the materials or accessing these materials will be using all of them. There are folks who might be using this in a business ethics course who want to use these 5 out of the 8 lessons. There might be people teaching a world religions course who want to use 7 out of the 8 lessons but don't use one of them for whatever reason. And there are some people who might say that they really want to use some of the more content-rich videos or some of the interview videos but don't need the introductions and summaries. So there will be a syllabus for folks who are using everything, but obviously we're not requiring that you use everything in order to use them. So it's not official in that sense. What was the other?
The other question, sorry for lumping them both together, was around assessment.
Oh, assessment tools, right. So there will be a couple of quizzes and things throughout the online course. And then a lot of what we're thinking of in terms of assessment is alongside some of these assignments, we'll be providing materials like rubric materials to help you think about how you are assessing the learning outcomes specifically attached to the course.
Great. One person already asked if we could have the web address for the July launch.
Aha, no.
The best course of action, if people are interested, is to email you at the email address on this slide, correct?
Yes. So if you are interested in using these, and we hope that you are, obviously, send me an email at esther@ifyc.org. I will be adding you to a list of folks who will be receiving a couple of preview materials before the official launch, and then we'll also be creating a temporary login for you to go into the learning environment to preview everything. And that's the first place that you'll be able to see all of the videos, all of the assignments, all of the discussion questions, and really all of the components together. And so that will be the best place for you to, officially say, I want to use these parts and not these parts, or yes, I want to use everything. This is great. Hopefully that's what everyone says. So we will be creating that login in July when all the materials are ready, and we'll be sending that out to you. There's not a way, the web address is just going to be to the online learning course, and we're not sharing that yet because it hasn't been officially built out yet. We're still getting some of the videos finalized.
Great. I'm going to mute Esther and myself for 1 second, just give you all a chance to let all of this percolate, add any more questions. We do still have 20 more minutes blocked off, so I've noted a couple more questions. I'm going to let you type any more in that you have, and we will be right back. So one of the questions that we, or it wasn't a question exactly, but a comment that we received as we were playing the preview was around including vocabulary words or other concepts in writing as a potential help for ESL students in particular. I wonder if you want to comment more broadly, Esther, about accessibility.
Yes, that's a great question, and that's a really important point. So as I said, the video that you watched was a rough cut, so it's not final, and one of the things that we are adding to some of the final versions is a little more textual grounding, so more vocabulary words popping up, a little more kind of visual cueing to make sure we're all staying on track. In terms of more broad sweeping accessibility questions, all of the videos are being closed captioned. So that's part of the video production process. So on the site itself, and then in any future life of these videos after they're not only living on that Dominican site, they all will have closed captioning that's done by the production company that's creating the videos themselves. So we're not relying on YouTube videos, transcription, or any of that stuff that I know can be a little faulty. The transcription, or the closed captioning for the videos is going to be based on the scripts of the voiceover and of EBU, and also just transcribing what actually ended up being recorded and what made it into the final cut. So all of that will be included for any students that are hard of hearing, or any students that are ESL, or anything else where they would need that additional element. Yeah, so I hope that and that is part of a commitment that IFYC has for all of our online material moving forward. So although in the past it has not always been perfect, moving forward from a recent commitment, all of our online content is going to be closed captioned and not relying on YouTube or other sometimes faulty resources.
Indeed. There was one question from Sarmeet about whether it would be appropriate to use this in a high school setting.
That's a great question. So I would say off the top of my head that parts of it are certainly appropriate for a high school setting. I don't think that there's any part of it that is inappropriate for high school students. I think it would just perhaps require some additional framing because there's an emphasis on well, actually, I don't know. I mean, there's an emphasis on civic and professional life, and on what happens when you enter the workforce in different professional sectors and things like that. That it would be just as relevant for high school students who are thinking about those things. In terms of learning and development levels, we are focusing primarily on undergraduate students, but I think with some perhaps additional support or changing some of the assignments to be more high school friendly, I think you could use this for high school students.
Great. I think that I read back all of the questions that were shared in the chat box. I am very sorry if I missed one of them. If anyone wants to take a minute to type any further questions in, please feel free. This is me stalling in case that is the case. Is there anything else that you thought of, Esther, that you want to be sure to say?
I think I've said everything. I just want to emphasize again that all of these resources are free, and they are being put together in an order and in a way that we think successfully comprises a full course. And we will in the future be offering this as a standalone online course. But we also recognize that faculty, you have a lot on your plate. You're not necessarily able to pick up a full new course, and so you might be integrating this into an existing course. You might be using this as a way to help revise an existing course, or you might be able to put a couple of parts from this into an existing course. So we're open to that. We're excited to see how you integrate this and how you use it in the courses that you are teaching in religious studies and in other disciplines. So we're really excited for you to do that, and that's something that we've built into the structure as well.
Great. Another question that just came in may or may not directly relate to this webinar. This is actually a great segue. Does IFYC have a library of case studies that we can access? I'm going to switch us over to the next slide here. I'm not sure whether this directly answers your question, but if you head to this website, ifyc.org/resources, you'll find a ton of PDFs with resources that you can download for free, some of which do include lots of different case studies that you can use in the classroom. I'll also just mention a couple of other upcoming resources and events from Interfaith Youth Corps. The main one to know about right now is the Interfaith Leadership Institute, which some of the folks on this call are very familiar with. This is a 3-day training for student leaders and their staff or faculty allies on campus to join together. The next one is coming up in August here in Chicago, where IFYC is headquartered. If you head to ifyc.org/ILI, you can learn more about it. And I like to mention it on these calls because I am the person who can tell you if you are eligible for special discounts. So if your campus has not sent a delegation in several years, and or if you've never sent a delegation, you are eligible for 2 free registrations. So if you'd like me to check on whether that's true for your school, please email me at julia@ifyc.org. This last link here, this is kind of the wheelhouse of the team that Esther is on. Esther, do you want to say anything about what else folks can find on the website?
Yeah, so we have a number of grant opportunities that we offer for faculty throughout the year. We have a seminar that we do every summer, at least once every summer, if not twice every summer, that focuses on teaching interfaith understanding and helping faculty to think through revising or developing courses that would bring in interfaith component or interfaith studies components into their existing courses. And those are really popular seminars. I know that a couple of you on the call are alum of those seminars, so it's great to have you here. We also have a number of resources, curriculum-specific resources that we've put together, some of which are based on syllabi that faculty have taught in the past that they've shared with us so that we can share them with you. We also have a number of case studies that have come out of some of the grant opportunities that have been offered to faculty in the past, and we are generally available for any curriculum or academic-specific support that people are looking for, whether you're thinking through revising a course, you're thinking through adding a course, you're trying to figure out how to address certain issues in the classroom. We're happy to hear from you and help you do that as best we can, and to connect you with other faculty and other campuses who might be able to speak to their own experiences or help you workshop those problems based on challenges that they face in their own campus context. So a lot of what we do is around networking and kind of offering you chances to continue doing the great work you're doing.
Thank you, Esther. And thank all of you for joining us. I think we will go ahead and sign out since I don't see further questions coming into the chat box. But if you do think of more later, please don't hesitate to email Esther at esther@ifyc.org. And thanks again so much for your time and attention. We look forward to sharing this with all of you in July, and you'll receive an email from me in the next few days with some follow-up links and information. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.